pray with me. Gracious God, may the meditations of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be a pleasing offering to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, I was talking to someone about the book of Ruth several weeks ago when I was planning on preaching a series on it. And they mentioned that there were some parts of it that made them uncomfortable. Specifically, this part that we read today made them uncomfortable. You may have found yourself wondering, what exactly is going on here? Naomi instructs her daughter-in-law to meet up with a guy in the middle of the night after he's had some drinks. She's to uncover his feet and then lie down next to him. He wakes up to a woman lying next to him. They talk, and the guy sends her home with a bunch of food, but she has to sneak out before sunrise. What is going on here? It's always important to remember that the Bible doesn't have neat and tidy ideas about things. And just reading something, I was just reading something the other day where a writer was saying the Bible clearly taught something about sexual ethics. I don't remember what they were trying to say. But I'm not sure what Bible that person was reading, because the Bible that I'm reading today introduces all sorts of confusing ideas about sex. S-E-X. It's an awkward passage, and it's not one that I'm thrilled to preach about, especially when there are kids in worship. Now, Naomi and her foreign daughter-in-law have returned to Naomi's hometown of Bethlehem. Naomi feels bitter and empty. She had a husband and 2 sons, but they're all gone now. And in the patriarchal view of her society, she has nothing. She has no security. But Ruth has stood by her faithfully. But Naomi doesn't really seem to think that amounts to much. You know, back in the beginning where Ruth gives that great speech about being with her always and going wherever she goes, and Naomi doesn't say anything in response to that at all. But they're both pretty poor, and so Ruth goes out in the fields to glean. And there she meets Boaz, who happens to be a relative of her dead father-in-law. Boaz seems impressed by Ruth. He feeds her a good lunch and makes sure she had a lot of grain to take home. And Naomi, she starts to show signs of her spirits lifting. Maybe she doesn't feel so hopeless after all. Boaz is a relative who might act as a redeemer for her and Ruth. And that could dramatically improve their lot. Now, up until now, good things have been happening just by coincidence. Ruth just happened to be gleaning at Boaz's field. Boaz just happened to be out visiting his workers when she was there. Boaz just happened to be a relative of Ruth's late father-in-law. Those are those coincidences we talked about last week. But now Naomi decides to not let things depend on coincidence any longer. She hatches a plan to move things along. This past week, I decided that I needed to learn all that I could about threshing and winnowing grain. It turns out it's incredibly time-consuming activity in the past. In fact, threshing used to take up to 1/4 of farmers' time before machines. You know, threshing is how the seeds are removed from the stalks of the grain. You beat the stalks against something hard, or you lay the stalks out and you hit them with a stick or a flail until the seeds are broken off the stalks. But then you still have the grain encased in the chaff, that lightweight little covering. So farmers would take the grain into a barn with wide doors open to allow the wind to blow through, and they toss the grain up into the air. And the chaff, because it's so light, it gets picked up by the wind and blown away, while the grain just that's how you get pure grain to use. So winnowing is what Boaz has been doing in his barn that night. He's been throwing up the wheat and the chaff to separate the wheat from the chaff. And Naomi has Ruth get all cleaned up with nice clothes and perfume. And I don't know if you wondered this, but when I read that, I thought, how does Ruth suddenly have nice clothes? Last I heard, they were in pretty bad shape. But I guess we're not supposed to ask that question. But Ruth agrees to do it. Naomi is not going to leave this to chance. On the threshing floor, Boaz has eaten and drunken his fill, and now he is asleep. Ruth approaches him and does something. It's not exactly clear what she does. Naomi tells Ruth to uncover his feet. Now, as a child, I was always shown a picture of Ruth sneaking up to Boaz and simply taking the covers off of his feet. Kind of a very innocent picture. In fact, just hold that image. For those of you under about 45, just hold that image in your mind. It turns out it might have actually been something other than that. Feet can be a euphemism for something other than feet. But the text doesn't really lay it out for us, however. Maybe it was just feet. Can't really say. Either way, it is a bold action coming from a woman towards a man who's quite a bit higher than her on the social ladder. She lies beside him, another bold action. And when he wakes up, he's startled and probably confused. He doesn't know who's there. And notice at this point, she doesn't follow Naomi's instructions. Naomi tells her to wait until Boaz tells her what to do. But that is not what Ruth does. In a way, she kind of takes a page out of her mother-in-law's playbook. And she tells Boaz what to do. She says to him, "Spread out your robe over your servant." Now, that's a way of talking about marriage. Ruth is proposing to Boaz. That is a pretty shocking idea. Even in our day, I remember I've heard some people say, well, she's the one that proposed to her husband. Oh my gosh. There's quite this little scandal about that even now. Imagine what that would have been like 3,000 years ago. But nevertheless, the gambit seems to pay off. Boaz responds positively. He identifies her as a woman of worth, which notice is the same phrase that was used to describe Boaz back in chapter 2. He agrees to marry her, but there is a wrinkle. Because it turns out there's another relative more closely related to Ruth's dead father-in-law. He has the first right to redeem. But Boaz assures her that all will be well. She sleeps beside him until just before daybreak. He measures out more grain for her, and she slips out before anybody else has a chance to see that she was there. Naomi is anxious to see Ruth. She wants to know all of the details. Ruth tells her, and Naomi assures her that Boaz will resolve this issue today. That is quite a change for Naomi, isn't it? She suddenly is very confident that things are going to turn out well. She suddenly has a lot of hope. And perhaps that's kind of a miracle of this entire story, is Naomi's movement from call me Mara to telling Ruth that Boaz is going to take care of this situation this very day. This is another one of those places where we see chesed, faithful love, being demonstrated. Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi is then matched by Boaz's faithfulness to Ruth. And in a way, Naomi starts acting in faithfulness towards Ruth as well. Boaz commends Ruth for going after him instead of a younger man. And Boaz rewards her by agreeing to do everything that she has asked. he also acts as a goel for Naomi and Ruth. The goel is a relative of the family whose job it is to redeem them. It's an important part of the social welfare system of that ancient day. When a member of the family is in difficult straits, someone related to them is supposed to step up and help them out. We can see that our own call is to show faithful love to others and also to really step up for the benefit of others. And I think the message for us today is about taking the initiative like Naomi did and then Ruth did. Naomi's story is instructive for us here. She was down and out on her luck. She felt like she had no future. But once a few good things drop into her lap, she picks it up and she runs with it. She takes the initiative, decides she's going to grab that potential blessing by the horns and not let go. And Ruth follows her example and also does that. Well, where do we need to be taking the initiative to receive blessings from God? Where do we need to be acting boldly to get that ball rolling? Now, we as a church, we know something about taking risks. After all, we agreed to call a pastor hiring a long-haired hippie from the West Coast. Still can't believe it. And I've certainly had to be bold in my own life, taking chances that other people think are crazy. Being a pastor? What are you thinking? In fact, about 10 years ago, my two favorite high school teachers took me out to lunch. Why did they take me out to lunch? Turns out it was an intervention. They were trying to get me to be a teacher. Now, there is nothing wrong with being a teacher, but that wasn't where my heart was. Sometimes you have to follow the course that doesn't quite line up with what other people think it should. Ruth's actions would be scandalous today, and I can't help wondering how they would have been viewed at the time. What are we doing today that might be viewed as scandalous, but is the best way to take the initiative? Where do we need to push ourselves? Where do we need to put ourselves out there? These last several months, I've talked a lot about our personal mission fields. That is the people in your life that you are in a position to influence them positively and help bring them to Bethany. How is it going with your personal mission field right now? We've talked a lot about inviting friends to church. How is that going? And I realize that's a thing that takes time to cultivate that relationship, to build that trust. You can't just ask someone to church the first time you meet them. They'll think you want money. Or if they're actually a church person, they'll think you want to put them on the property committee. But are you moving forward on that project? You think I'm joking, but I've actually been told that people who are savvy about church, when they come in and visit a church, they're looking at the building thinking, ooh, that might be in need of a capital campaign, and I don't know if I want to get involved in that, and they're going to want some young guy to get on the committee, and I better walk away from that. So that actually is how some people think. But how are we moving forward on that project? I don't know if have we scheduled it yet to bring a friend to church? Have we scheduled that date yet, Corey? Okay, we have. Is it the first week in October?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so first week in October is the Bring Your Friend to Church Day. And that's an opportunity for you to take the initiative. It's a way for you to do something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's not really a crazy thing to do. It's definitely not meeting somebody on the threshing floor in the middle of the night, not that crazy. But it is an opportunity to take the initiative. But there are certainly many other opportunities in your life and in your mission field as well. Volunteer some time to the local humane society, or give to the food bank, or volunteer at the food bank. Give some gently used clothes to a charity that provides them to those in need. Increase your giving to the church. It might not seem like it, but every member of the consistory will tell you the church does in fact need your donations. That's what it's about, taking the initiative. There is a miracle in this story of Ruth. You have Naomi moving to hopelessness to taking the initiative. This sort of passive sense that life has passed her by and she has nothing to look forward to her taking charge and planning out a way to create a future for herself and her daughter-in-law, Ruth. And because she took that initiative, and then Ruth also took initiative, then a whole bunch of new and amazing possibilities came into being, and we'll read about those next week. But for us, the lesson is to take the initiative. What is it we need to be doing? Where is it we need to be going? It might even seem a little scandalous to some people, but where can we take that initiative? Because that's what we are here to do, is to take that initiative and bring about those blessings.